Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. It's quite interesting to hear all the presentations and roundtable discussions. But when I'm going to talk about the complex framing, I also, draw some of my theoretical resources from Goffman. But it's a little bit more than Goffman because I'm talking about hyperspace and how virtuality and actuality hybridize in new ways, and how these hybridization possibilities, create new dynamics of framing to make sense of space in modern cities. So virtual reality and physical reality has always been related. And at the very first start, always people compare virtual reality to a mirror. So we're talking about the mirror of the world. But then mirror assume that it's the relation between VR and the PR, virtual reality, and the physical reality is representational. So VR is virtual reality represented by, let's say, the illusions created by architecture, church buildings, or performances are not real. I mean, if you think about the authenticity thing, so by not real, I'm not saying they are not reality. Virtual reality is reality, as good as physical reality. Okay, but then they are secondary. The so-called real PR, physical reality, is primary, but the virtual reality is secondary. So the relation between coupling between VR and PR is actually not public relation, but physical reality is actually representational. So representational coupling between VR and PR starts human civilization. Human differs from animals. No, that's a bias against animals, but anyway, human civilization starts from the distinction between VR and the PR. They create something that's not physical. They create symbols, images. So start think about the first, eras of representational coupling between VR and the PR. What you can think about is, in the first generation, it's always whole bodily involved in the coupling. All senses are involved. You stand in the church. I mean, I got a friend who told me that the Western church is at first the primary version of virtual reality because they try to create something that's otherworldly. It's not, physical reality. So the whole body, all the senses, all the five senses are involved. Both VR and the physical reality are 3D or three-dimension in nature. And the VR represents or projects a holistic. It could be divine, it could be stately, political, or cultural order to physical reality. So physical reality is always, chaotic, not so orderly, but thanks very much to the existence or creation of virtual reality, either in the form of architectures or, storytelling, religion, political stories. VR presents an order, a holistic order. So if we compare that to a mirror, it's a holistic one-piece mirror that projects a holistic order of certain parameters to the physical reality. Representations can bring into presence what is absent. Meaning systems, orders. But for modern conditions, if you think about industrial, civilization, if you think about the modern mass media conditions, well, several things happen, which are also very critical. First, the reduction of senses. Well, if you think about reading newspapers or watching televisions, the process of getting involved in the mediation process does not really involve, most of your senses. It's only predominantly visual and auditory. So a reduction of senses involved in the transformation and the connection between VR and AR. People sit in the sofa, become couch potatoes, watch television, read the newspapers, and besides, in the connection between virtual reality and the physical reality, well, there's a flattening process. The 3D physical reality is oftentimes flattened into papers or screens of different sizes. Well, screen looks like 3D because they use the painting 3D perspective saying. So, but in fact, it's flattened. So they reduced the 3D physical reality into a 2D, system, a 2D mediated virtual reality on newspapers, on book pages, on big or small screens. But the benefit of flattening up is actually to reduce the backward. You don't see it. I mean, there's no backward. For flatten the surfaces, you don't have a backward. Everything is, opened up in front of you for you to see. You become a subject. The word, when it's flattened on the map, become an object. And then different organizations, including governments, including capitalist powers, they try to piece together fragments of realities into a bigger mirror. Big organizations create damn bigger architects to try to piece together the fragments of small realities into something that's bigger. They try to restore the bigger, mirror thing. It's always bigger than the individual organizations. Mass media create a bigger mirror or bigger virtual reality. It's bigger than any individuals. It's bigger than, and organizations, traffic network, then in the electronic medium period, it's electronic currents and signals. They, in different ways, using different, let's say, temporality, speed, rhythm, spatial parameters, they connect, they weave together fragments of small realities into a bigger holistic mirror. That's mass media in society. So if you think about the process, well, we have three, let's say, variables. If we look at, scrutinize the coupling between virtual reality and physical reality, there are three variables. Number one, dimensions. You can be talking about, dimensions including 3D, 2D dimension reduction, or you could be talking about the transformation process, virtual, physical connection, whereby only visual or auditory senses are involved, or whether the whole body is involved. And you can be talking about the symmetry of the transformation processes. Sometimes, we only for let's say last year when the president of Google was talking about their future, he said something like, in Google Goggle, everybody have their own virtual reality, and then Google's vision is to put all these little individual realities into something bigger. But into something bigger, they recognize that each individual has its own, small world. So, yeah, some of these processes are more symmetry, or some of these are one-sided. A bigger organization, a big power, try to create a more holistic, bigger order. So if you do this, 2 plus multiplied by 2 multiplied by 2, you got 8 different conditions with 8 different modes of framing. For example, if we talk about the flattening or flattened, connection between the transformation between virtual and physical that involves flattening, then you can see flattened. If it's flattened and it's visual and it's asymmetrical, well, we have something called newspapers and televisions, whereby, the 3D physical reality was reduced into 2D. And the senses that was mostly involved, predominantly involved in the process is visual. And the order is asymmetrical. That's called mass media because it creates an order, holistic, bigger than any individual could ever. And besides, if you think about a flattened visual asymmetrical visual, let's say VR and the PR connection, then the texts on the flattened surfaces could be recognized by AI agents based on salience-based pattern recognition or detection. So on the flattened surface, nobody is needed. Not say nobody is needed. But if you think about a flattened surface, flattened process with more senses and symmetrical transformation, then PlayStation games. It's still on the big screen, but more senses are involved. You can play golf in the physical reality, but on the flattened surface, let's say, your avatar will play golf on the flattened surface, responding to your movements, but then full senses are involved. And it's symmetrical. There's no need or there's no intent to create a, let's say, holistic order, a bigger mirror. The PlayStation games are more like a flattened, more senses, and it's symmetrical. Then interaction analysis. Movement recognition, human-computer interaction, and the textual analysis are involved to figure out what's happening there. What's happening is the basic question of frame analysis. Or you can talk about 3D, both the visual reality, virtual reality, and physical reality, all three-dimensional. more senses are involved, but it's asymmetrical. So we're thinking about it, we're talking about the experience when you stand at an amazing architectural monuments. We're talking about the liminal spatial experiences and how the body feel about a 3D virtual reality when it's also, it evokes the process where virtual reality becomes so physical. And then, of course, we can be talking about the 3D, more senses, but symmetrical. Then you can be talking about the Goffman situation analysis, whereby people are the virtual reality, the meaning system, and the real human beings are all 3D. The full body senses are involved, but the process is more symmetrical. It's more, come to and force. It's two-way. For each of these things, well, for all these possibilities, the basic relation between virtual reality and physical reality is still representational. But now technologies like MVR, mobile VR technologies, devices, spatial computing, rotating media, geomedia, evoke virtual elements. They call virtual elements into physical world and vice versa. So if you think about, let's say, Vision Pro, the elements they call from the virtual world to the actual world does not represent anything in the physical world. It's an addition. The virtual elements was pulled into the physical reality and become a part of it. So elements are not secondary representations of the represented. Co-presence mode of connecting VR and AR, VR and PR. About 1 minute? Okay. So I'm going to speed up. So instead of a representational mode, the co-presence mode of VR and the VR and the PR co-connection become the reality. VR PR displacement. If you think about the VR and the PR as not representational, but as equally good and they are co-present, then there are different modes of connecting the two. For example, displacement enfolding, as you mentioned, or co-present but separated senses. You can separate your visuals in the VR, but at the same time your body is in the PR, and both are present. Both senses are present. Visual, and not only flattening but also flashing up. A lot of the things that has been flattened into screens are flashing up by 3D printing. So individual fragments woven into global networks. Instead of saying we create a holistic, uniform order, the order appears in the transient, let's say, matrix or network of a lot of indexed small words put together. Gathering individual goggles into a mirror of the word. The mirror of the word has become a mirror where it does not project a single holistic order. It becomes an indexing system. So new framing dynamics to make sense and reorient. Frame analysis tells us what's happening. It's a method for us to know what the situation means. But no, instead of seeing different frames compete with each other or relate to each other, we can add a layer. Say there's a mode shifting between distinct modes of VR, AR connections. We can shift this momentarily from representational mode to the co-presence mode, or sometimes to metaphorical modes. And at the same time, continuous variations between displacement and emplacement. Percentage-based variation of sensor leakage. I said you different senses were, part of it was in the VR, part of it in the AR, but then put together. It becomes a continuous process. Well, 80% of your visual is in the VR, 20% of your visual is in the AR. Flatten and the flashing up has also become continuous variations. I would say this object has been 70% flashing up. So more variations. Why does it matter? Because more complex framing dynamics involving continuous variations of different modes of framing, not only representational, but a continuous variation between representational mode to co-presence mode creates a lot of new frame dynamics. It's important because, well, it's especially important in the AI era because one of the key arguments in AI study is AI has no body, so they could not develop human-like sensitivity to contexts. But for different modes or different types of PR-VR links, body is not always needed. So are we talking about if the frame shifts from the representational mode, well, pattern recognition could create meaning, but then at the next moment, it becomes a more in a Goffman-like 3D social interaction analysis, then it's difficult to say that AR cannot play a role in the process. The question becomes, when should AI be involved to make meaning or recognize meaning? Whose meaning? More to come. Representational links between VR and AR is moving gradually to co-presence mode as relation between VR and AR. But there's another possibility, resonance between VR and PR. Talking about more metaphorical relations between VR and PR, which change, but not in the representational mode. So thank you very much.